With $95 million in our account, you're nothing but dead weight. Get out. Those were the words my daughter-in-law Sabrina spat at me, her perfectly manicured hand shoving my clothes into a suitcase like I was a pile of trash. My favorite blouse tore at the seam as she yanked it off the hanger. Her face, usually painted into a mask of polite civility, was twisted with greed so naked, so raw, I almost didn't recognize her. My name is Marjorie Hale. I am 68 years old. A widow, a mother, a grandmother, and apparently in my son's house I had just become disposable. Before I go further, let me ask you something. Have you ever felt discarded by the very people you sacrificed everything for? And if you're listening right now, tell me in the comments, where are you tuning in from? Which state, which country? I'd love to know who's walking beside me in this story. Sabrina's laughter was sharp, like breaking glass. We don't need you anymore, Marjorie. We're millionaires now. We'll buy a mansion with staff quarters. If you're lucky, maybe we'll hire you as the maid. I looked toward my son Lucas. He stood in the doorway, paralyzed. His face was a battlefield shock hesitation, and beneath it all the intoxication of sudden wealth. For a moment, I searched his eyes, desperate to find the little boy who once clung to my lap. During thunderstorms, the young man who had begged me to move in when I sold my home to help him with his down payment. Instead, I saw a stranger. Mom Lucas finally spoke, his voice cracking. Maybe Sabrina has a point. With this kind of money, we could set you up somewhere really nice. One of those luxury retirement communities with activities, healthcare, everything you need. A retirement home. A high-end prison dressed up with chandeliers. My heart cracked along lines I didn't even know were there. My son wasn't defending me. He was negotiating me out of his life. You'd put me away, I whispered. Not put away, Sabrina corrected smoothly, zipping the overstuffed suitcase. Placed. Somewhere convenient. For everyone. She smirked as though she'd just solved an inconvenient math problem. I stood straighter, though my knees shook. This was the woman I had welcomed into my family. The woman for whom I sold my own home, emptied my savings, and moved into their guest room so they could have their dream house. The locksmith's already scheduled, she added with a chilling finality. You'll be gone by tonight. Lucas said nothing, not one word to stop her. My knitting needles clattered down the steps when she shoved the suitcase through the doorway. A half-finished scarf I'd been working on for my grandson sprawled across the concrete like a fallen banner. And in that moment, as I bent to pick it up, a strange calm settled over me. Because Sabrina and Lucas didn't know what I knew. They didn't know that the winning ticket, the one worth $95 million, was in my purse with my name on it. I didn't shout. I didn't beg. I simply lifted my chin, gathered my scarf, and stepped off their porch with more dignity than either of them would ever understand. Sometimes, the universe hands you clarity in the ugliest wrapping. That morning, mine came, dressed as betrayal. I paused at the bottom of the step, suitcase at my side, knitting scarf draped over my arm. Lucas's face appeared at the doorway, torn between guilt and temptation. Sabrina, triumphant, clutched the lottery ticket on the kitchen counter like it was her crown jewel. You really think you're untouchable now? I said softly, my voice carrying up the steps. That you've won everything. Sabrina laughed a brittle, ugly sound. We don't think, Marjorie. We know $95 million changes everything. I reached into my purse. My fingers brushed over the small, worn slip of paper I had checked the night before twice, 3 times, until the numbers seared themselves into my memory. My heart had nearly stopped then. But instead of waking them with the news, I'd folded it back into my wallet and waited. I wanted to see their true faces. The winning ticket, I said, my voice steady now, isn't the one you're holding. Their heads snapped toward me. For the first time all morning, silence fell heavy across that doorway. It's mine, I continued. The ticket in my name. $95 million. Not yours. Sabrina's smirk froze, then collapsed. Lucas's eyes went wide color draining from his face. In their expressions, I saw it all: shock, fear, greed, and something far worse, recognition of what they had just revealed about themselves. You're lying. Sabrina's voice cracked her bravado, slipping like cheap paint in the rain. She snatched the ticket off the counter, scanning the numbers with frantic eyes. This is the winner. It has to be. Check again, I told her calmly. Look closer this time. Lucas stumbled forward, grabbed the ticket from her hand, and compared it to the printout still lying on the table. His lips moved as he read. His shoulders sagged. And then he whispered the number that had haunted me all night. $500. $500, I confirmed. Enough for a weekend at the lake. Not for a mansion. Not for a new life. Sabrina's scream was primal, tearing through the air like a wounded animal. You thief! You planned this. You bought 2 tickets just to trap us. I bought them the way I always do, I said. One in your names, one in mine. A family tradition. You can't do this to us, she spat, mascara streaking down her face. We deserve that money. Deserve, I repeated quietly. That's a dangerous word. Lucas finally looked at me, really looked, and for the first time I saw shame flicker across his face. But it was too late. I lifted my suitcase, tucked my knitting back inside, and called the Uber I had already ordered before they even began throwing me out. At the doorway, I paused. You showed me who you are when you thought I had nothing. Remember that. And then I walked away, the sound of Sabrina's sobbing rage echoing behind me like a storm I'd just stepped out of. Tell me, if you were in my shoes, what would you have done in that moment? Walk away like I did, or fight right there in the doorway? It didn't take long. By nightfall, Sabrina had turned my quiet humiliation into a public spectacle. The first message came from a neighbor. Are you okay, Marjorie? I saw what Sabrina posted. When I opened my phone, my stomach lurched. There it was, a photo of me carrying my suitcase down their front steps, scarf trailing from the zipper, my face pale but steady. The caption read, "When your mother-in-law steals your lottery ticket and your peace of mind." Within hours, it spread like wildfire. Hashtags bloomed across the internet. Justice for Sabrina, greedy, grandma, family betrayal. Strangers who had never met me were calling me a thief, a manipulator, a parasite. I scrolled until my eyes blurred each comment, slicing deeper than the last. She should be ashamed of herself. Typical freeloading grandma. Lock her up. Meanwhile, my phone buzzed with Lucas's messages. Mom, please. This has gone too far. She's just upset. Let's talk. We can work this out. Work this out. After he stood silent, while his wife called me dead weight, after he suggested tucking me away in some luxury cage. I stared at the screen, remembering all the nights I'd stayed up hemming his jeans when he couldn't afford new clothes, all the mornings I walked to work in the snow so he could have bus money for school. And now, in the world's eyes, I was the villain. Sometimes betrayal doesn't just strip you of family, it steals your name, your reputation, your story. And Sabrina was rewriting mine with every post, every lie, every crocodile tear she sold to her followers. I sat alone in the dim light of my hotel room, the winning ticket safe in my purse, and realized this battle wasn't about money anymore. It was about survival, about reclaiming my dignity from the smear campaign of a woman who saw me as nothing but an obstacle. By the third day, Sabrina had taken her performance beyond social media. I turned on the local news just in time to see her sitting on a park bench, hair pulled back in a demure bun, crocodile tears rolling down her cheeks. "We just wanted to share the joy," she told the reporter voice, trembling. But Marjorie, she manipulated everything. She turned my husband against me. She stole our future. The anchor nodded gravely, as if Sabrina were a martyr instead of a viper. That night, strangers slipped notes under my hotel door. "Shame on you. Give it back." One even scrawled "witch" across the envelope in red marker. Lucas called again and again, his voice ragged on voicemail. "Mom, I'm sorry. I don't know what came over me. Please don't shut me out. She's out of control." I listened once, then deleted them all. Regret is cheap when it arrives after betrayal. But then came the call that steadied me. A voice, strong, clear, familiar. "Mom, it's me, Emily. I just saw the news. I'm on the first flight back. Emily, my daughter, a trauma surgeon across the country, too busy saving lives to call more than once a month, but always my fiercest defender." When she arrived, she dropped her bag and wrapped me in a hug so tight it squeezed the air from my lungs. "Don't worry, Mom," she said, pulling back to look me square in the eye. "We're going to fight this together." And in that moment, for the first time since Sabrina had shoved me out the door, I felt something other than fear or sorrow. I felt fire. The courthouse smelled of old wood and cold marble, the kind of place where lives could be dismantled in an afternoon. I sat at the defendant's table, hands folded tightly in my lap, Emily beside me like a steel wall in heels. Across the aisle sat Sabrina, dressed in gray like a grieving widow, her eyes downcast, her tissue perfectly visible to the cameras circling the room. Her lawyer rose first. His voice dripped with false concern. "Your Honor, this is a troubling case. A vulnerable 68-year-old woman suddenly comes into $95 million. She abandons her family, flees across state lines, and cuts off all contact. These are not the actions of a stable mind. My client, Sabrina Hale, seeks only to ensure these funds are managed responsibly for the good of the family." Family. That word on his lips felt like acid. Sabrina dabbed her eyes for effect, her sobs timed perfectly to his speech. The cameras loved her. The gallery murmured in sympathy. When my lawyer stood, her tone was crisp, slicing through the theatrics. "The truth is simpler, Your Honor. My client was thrown out of her son's home by the very woman sitting across from us today. We have text messages, threats sent by Mrs. Sabrina Hale. We have social media posts defaming my client, painting her as a thief. This is not about concern. this is about greed. Emily squeezed my hand under the table, whispering, "Stay strong, Mom." Then came the moment I dreaded. The bailiff called my name. "Marjorie Hale, please take the stand." I rose slowly, my heart pounding but my back straight. For years I had bent myself small to keep peace. Not today. I swore on the Bible, then lifted my chin and faced Sabrina directly for the first time since that morning on the porch. "Mrs. Hale," the opposing lawyer began, "isn't it true that you left your family home suddenly without explanation?" "I didn't leave," I said, my voice steady. "I was thrown out by the same woman now pretending to weep." The gallery gasped. For the first time, Sabrina's mask cracked. The lawyer smirked, circling me like a shark. "Mrs. Hale, do you often feel people are against you, that they want to take advantage of you?" "Yes," I replied without hesitation, "because sometimes they do." And in this case, I gestured toward Sabrina. The proof is sitting right there. A ripple ran through the courtroom. Sabrina's cheeks flushed red beneath her carefully powdered foundation. The lawyer pivoted. "You claim the winning ticket was yours. But isn't it true you purchased 2 tickets, one in your name, one in theirs? Doesn't that make this a family asset?" I leaned forward, my voice cutting through the room. "A gift is not a contract. That ticket in their names won $500. Mine won $95 million. And when they thought I had nothing, they packed my bags and called me dead weight. That's who they are when they think no one is watching." Gasps. Murmurs. Even the judge's eyebrows lifted slightly. Then came the moment I hadn't expected. The bailiff called Lucas to the stand. He looked thinner. His suit wrinkled, his eyes hollow. He couldn't meet mine at first. Then he spoke, voice breaking. "It's true. Sabrina threw my mother out. I stood there and I didn't stop her. I was weak. But I won't be silent now. She's telling the truth." Sabrina whipped toward him, her mask shattering. "You spineless coward!" she shrieked, leaping to her feet. "You're choosing her over me after everything I gave you." The judge's gavel cracked down. "Order." Emily rose next, her testimony sharp and unflinching. "My mother is not unstable. I am a trauma surgeon. I evaluate competence every day. My mother is lucid, rational, and far stronger than anyone gives her credit for. The only instability in this room is sitting across the aisle." Sabrina slammed her fists on the table. "You'll regret this, all of you." The judge's glare could have frozen fire. "One more outburst, Mrs. Hale and I will hold you in contempt." And in that silence, the scales tipped. For once, the truth had cut louder than Sabrina's theatrics. The judge adjusted her glasses, her voice cold and precise. "Having heard all testimony and reviewed the evidence, this court finds no grounds to question Mrs. Marjorie Hale's mental competence. The petition is dismissed." The gavel struck once. Sharp. Final. For a heartbeat, the room was frozen. Then a low murmur spread through the gallery. Some shook their heads at Sabrina's theatrics. Others glanced at me with something close to respect. Across the aisle, Sabrina's face twisted into a mask of disbelief. Her lawyer leaned away from her as if even he wanted no part of her fury now. Lucas bowed his head, tears sliding silently down his cheeks. And Emily, my fierce, unyielding daughter, gripped my hand so tightly my knuckles ached. I should have felt triumphant, victorious. $95 million secure, my dignity upheld. But instead, a hollow sadness pressed down on me. Because the cost of this victory was clear, the family I thought I had no longer existed. As we stepped out of the courthouse, flashes from cameras blinded me. Reporters shouted questions. "Mrs. Hale, how does it feel to win? Do you plan to share any of the money with your son? Will you forgive your daughter-in-law?" I didn't answer. I kept walking, chin high, heart heavy, clutching Emily's arm like an anchor. Because the truth was this: I had won the case, but I had lost the illusion that love alone was enough to keep a family together. The courthouse was behind me, but its echoes followed everywhere. The slam of the gavel, the judge's voice dismissing Sabrina's lies, the whispers of strangers as I walked past it, all clung to me like smoke on an old coat. Emily hailed a cab, but for once I wasn't rushing. I stood at the top of those stone steps, breathing in the crisp air, letting it sting my lungs. I had walked into that building as a defendant in my daughter-in-law's twisted narrative. I walked out carrying something much heavier than $95 million, the unvarnished truth of who my family really was. At the hotel later that night, Emily ordered room service soup and a glass of red wine. For me, nothing fancy. She insisted I rest, but sleep did not come easily. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Sabrina's face red with fury as the judge shut her down, her nails tapping the table like claws, desperate to dig into something she could no longer control. Lucas had come to see me, standing awkwardly in the lobby with his hands shoved deep into his pockets. For the first time in weeks, he looked like my boy again, not the hollow man torn between loyalty and greed. "Mom," he said, his voice breaking, "I can't undo what I did, but I want you to know I'm done with her. I filed for divorce this afternoon." I studied him carefully, searching for sincerity. His eyes were raw, his words hesitant but honest. Betrayal leaves scars too deep to vanish overnight, yet I felt a tiny splinter of hope pierce through the numbness. Maybe the son I raised was still buried somewhere beneath the shame. Still, I told him plainly, "Lucas, forgiveness is not a switch. You don't get to flip it because you're sorry now. Trust will take time, and I don't know if I'll ever trust you the way I once did." Tears welled in his eyes, but he nodded. "I'll earn it if you'll let me try." When he left, Emily turned to me, fierce as ever. "Don't let him back in too quickly, Mom. Regret is cheap. Consistency is what counts." Her words echoed long into the night. The days that followed felt strangely hollow. I had won, yes, but victories like these don't come wrapped in joy. They come wrapped in ashes. Reporters hounded me outside the hotel, microphones thrust into my face, voices demanding, "Mrs. Hale, what will you do with the money? Will you reconcile with your son? Do you have a message for Sabrina?" I gave them nothing, not one word. Because I realized something crucial. I didn't owe them my pain. I didn't owe anyone the performance of forgiveness. Instead, I began to plan. Emily connected me with a financial advisor and a lawyer who specialized in asset protection. For the first time in my life, I sat at a table where the conversation revolved around my future, not Lucas's mortgage or Sabrina's designer cravings. I signed papers establishing a trust not for my children, but for causes close to my heart, housing for widows, scholarships for single mothers, small grants for artists over 50 who had been told it was too late for them to begin again. Because it was never too late, I was living proof. One afternoon, as I walked through the city streets with Emily, we passed a bakery where children were decorating cupcakes in the window. Their laughter spilled onto the sidewalk, unbothered and unbroken. Emily slipped her arm through mine. "Mom, you're quiet today." "I was thinking," I said slowly, "how much of my life I spent shrinking myself to fit other people's expectations, and how quickly they discarded me once they thought I had no more use." Emily stopped, turned to face me. "And what about now?" I smiled faintly. "Now I'm learning to take up space, to live on my terms." She squeezed my hand. "That's the woman I always knew was inside you." But life has a way of testing newfound strength. A week later, a letter arrived at the hotel. No return address, but the handwriting was unmistakable Sabrina's. "You may have won in court, but this isn't over. Money makes enemies, Marjorie, and I promise you'll regret keeping it all to yourself." I felt Emily's rage boil beside me as she read over my shoulder. "She's unhinged. We should get a restraining order." But I folded the letter neatly and slipped it into a drawer. "No, darling. Let her waste her energy on threats. I'm done letting her dictate my life." Because here's the truth, Sabrina thought the lottery revealed her chance to ascend. But what it really did was strip away her mask. And me? It didn't make me rich. It made me free. Weeks turned into months. The money settled into accounts protected and guarded. Lucas called often sometimes just to ask how my day was. He sounded smaller, humbler, as though the weight of his choices had finally broken through his pride. I didn't rush to embrace him, but I didn't close the door either. Boundaries aren't walls, they're gates. And only those who prove worthy get to step through again. Emily, on the other hand, blossomed into my anchor. We shared dinners, long walks, even laughter again. Real laughter, the kind I thought betrayal had stolen from me forever. One evening, as the sun bled gold across the skyline, she asked, "Do you ever wish it had all happened differently?" I thought about it. About the humiliation on the porch, the pain of hearing my son suggest a senior community, the sting of Sabrina's accusations. "No," I said, finally. Because without that pain, I'd still be shrinking. I'd still be begging for scraps of love. The betrayal broke me, yes, but it also rebuilt me. And so here I am, not just a lottery winner, not just a mother, discarded and reclaimed, but a woman who finally sees herself clearly. Money didn't buy my dignity. Standing up for myself did. The courtroom was just the beginning. The real fight, the one to reclaim my life, was only starting, and for the first time in decades, I wasn't afraid. I used to believe that silence was noble, that if I endured, if I stayed quiet, the people I loved would eventually see me, value me, and treat me with the dignity I deserved. But silence doesn't win battles. Silence only feeds those who already see you as small. That day, when Sabrina shoved me out suitcase tumbling down the steps, I thought my world had ended. But now I realize that was the day it truly began. Because nothing exposes the heart of people faster than money. $95 million revealed what had always been there: greed, cowardice, betrayal. But it also revealed something in me, strength I had forgotten, fire I thought had gone out. When the courtroom ruled in my favor, it wasn't just about keeping the winnings. It was about reclaiming my life. About standing tall as a woman who will no longer beg for respect in her own family. About proving that even in your late 60s, you can tear down the walls others built around you and step into the open air free. And let me ask you this: How many of you listening right now have felt invisible in your own family? How many of you have sacrificed only to be treated as a burden once they thought they no longer needed you? If my story resonates, it's because it isn't just mine. It's part of the quiet, unspoken library of grandma stories that stretch across generations, stories of women who gave everything only to realize too late that giving doesn't always bring gratitude. But I refuse to let betrayal be the final chapter of my life. Instead, I am writing new chapters of self-respect, of second chances of living boldly. My story is a true family drama story, yes, but it is also a revenge story not against people, but against the silence that once kept me small. At 68, I am finally free to live not as someone's mother-in-law, not as someone's discarded burden, but as myself. And if you take nothing else from my words today, take this: it is never too late to begin again. Never too late to protect your dignity. Never too late to tell the truth of your own life out loud. Because the real jackpot isn't $95 million. It's discovering that your worth is not negotiable, not dependent on who stays or who leaves. It's realizing that dignity, once reclaimed, is priceless. If this story touched, you don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Eleanor Speaks, the home of true grandma stories. Family drama stories and revenge stories that remind us we are never too old to rise again. Drop a comment below and tell us where you're listening from, your state, your city, or even your country. Together, let's keep giving voice to the stories that matter.